Hi, I'm Abby from RTINGS.com. Today we'll be looking at the Samsung Q60D. We've reviewed so many of Samsung's higher-end models, and now it's time to look at the lowest-end model in Samsung's 2024 QLED lineup. It's sold for a good price, but is it worth your hard-earned money? Or should you look elsewhere for your budget TV needs? We've bought and tested the 65-inch model, but our results are also valid for all other sizes, all the way from the very small 32-inch to the big 85-inch models. So, let's roll! The Q60D is an entry-level model, but that's not stopping it from looking pretty good. The back of the TV is made of plastic, but it has a brushed finish that's rather pleasing to the touch. It uses two adjustable plastic feet instead of a central stand, and they're surprisingly sturdy. They can be adjusted to two distinct positions. The lower one lifts the TV about 2 inches from the table, while the higher one lifts it another inch. This will be high enough for almost any soundbar. There's minimal wobble at the lowest position and more noticeable wobbling at the higher position, but it won't cause any issues. Decent stuff overall. For cable management, the TV has channels on its back through which you can funnel cables, and it also comes with a single clip that you can attach to either foot. There are 3 HDMI ports, 2 USB 2.0 ports, a LAN port, and a digital optical audio out port. It also has an antenna connection with ATSC 1.0 support. Most of the ports are in a recessed inlet on the right side when you're facing the TV from the front, so they're hard to reach if the TV is wall-mounted. Even worse, the TV's third HDMI port, as well as its optical port, stick straight out the back, so these ports aren't accessible when the TV is flush on the wall. And if you need to use these ports, then you won't be able to have the TV mounted flush on the wall, which is a bummer. All HDMI ports on this TV are limited to up to 4K at 60 Hz, as it doesn't have any 120 Hz support. One of the HDMI ports, luckily not the one sticking out from the back, doubles as an eARC port. The TV passes through advanced audio signals from Dolby, but unfortunately it can't pass through the DTS audio formats that are commonly found on Blu-rays. The TV has the 2024 version of Samsung's popular Tizen OS smart interface. Due to the Q60D's reduced processing power, its interface lacks some of the bells and whistles of its more expensive counterparts. You don't get features like TV to mobile or Ambient Mode Plus. Still, it's fast and easy to use and supports Samsung's popular multi-view feature. Like on all TVs, there are ads throughout the interface that you can't turn off. A lovely feature that we could have done without. The Samsung remote. It's excellent. It's very compact with very few buttons but has a lot of spunk. It has built-in voice control so you can use voice commands to change inputs, launch apps, or search for content. It even answers basic questions. A nice feature of the more recent Samsung remotes is the solar panel on the back. It's pretty cool. Sure, you can just plug it in through its USB-C port too, which is useful if you need to charge it extra quickly. Alright, but how is its image quality, you may ask? Let's answer that right now, starting with contrast. The TV's contrast is alright. It doesn't have any local dimming, so the blacks are raised whenever bright highlights are on the screen. Still, in dim scenes without bright highlights, they're deep. The lack of local dimming means that the TV can't adjust the backlight of individual dimming zones, so bright highlights will impact the rest of the image. However, it also means that there won't be any distracting flicker or brightness changes as the highlights move between zones. Plus, there's no blooming around bright highlights or subtitles, so there are some advantages to not having local dimming, although they don't quite make up for the lack of it. The Samsung Q60D has adequate HDR brightness. It gets bright enough for some dimmer highlights to stand out, but it's not enough for most highlights to pop. Combined with the TV's alright contrast, it doesn't provide an impactful HDR experience. At least it does much better in SDR, as its SDR brightness is very good. It's bright enough to overcome glare in a well-lit room, so watching sports or SDR TV shows in the middle of a sunny afternoon won't be too much of an issue, especially with its decent reflection handling. Sure, this is far from the best reflection handling we've seen, but it's satisfactory, and it's especially solid when watching SDR content in rooms with a few lights. It handles ambient lighting much better than it does glare from direct sources of light, so avoid placing the TV in front of bright windows and you'll be fine. This TV has one good seat, right in front of it. That's because it has an inadequate viewing angle, as there's significant gamma shifting, color shifting, and brightness loss as you move off-center. And colors look increasingly washed out the further away you move to the side. It isn't a good TV for a wide seating arrangement or hosting large Stanley Cup watch parties. The TV's SDR color accuracy before any calibration is decent. It won't blow your socks off, but it's fine. Blues and greens are underrepresented in darker shades of gray, reds are underrepresented in all grays, and greens are a bit overrepresented in brighter grays. The color temperature is also noticeably cooler than our target of 6500 Kelvin, meaning that everything is bluer than it should be. Dark scenes are too dark, bright scenes are too bright, and many colors, especially yellows, reds, and magentas, are off the mark. Now, most people won't be bothered by this, which is a good thing for an entry-level TV, but purists will be. If you are a purist, then you'll be happy to know that you can massively improve the TV's accuracy after calibration. Everyone else will be satisfied with this TV's pre-calibration color accuracy. In HDR, this TV's accuracy is great. Like most LED TVs, near blacks are raised a bit, but after that, the TV tracks the content creator's intent impressively. The TV also preserves some bright details when it's near its peak brightness with content mastered at all levels. This TV uses quantum dot technology, so it has a very good color gamut. Its coverage of the DCI P3 color space, which is most used in HDR content, is outstanding. Its colors do tend to be a bit undersaturated, especially in yellows, reds, greens, and cyans. Sadly, its coverage of the wider Rec 2020 color space is only okay. Almost all colors are undersaturated here and are off the mark. Let's move on to image processing. The TV's low-quality content smoothing is poor. It does an outstanding job at preserving detail, but there's almost no smoothing done to the image, so there's still significant macro blocking in dark scenes. Its upscaling is better than its low-quality content smoothing, though. Details are clear enough, but finer details are hard to make out. Still, this is a good performance overall and leads to a pleasant viewing experience when watching upscaled content. Like most TVs, it uses pulse width modulation to dim its backlight. It's very good overall as it flickers at 480 Hz in the movie picture mode at all brightness levels, which also happens to be the most accurate picture mode overall, so that's good news. Unfortunately, all other picture modes, including game mode, flicker at a much slower 120 Hz, which can cause image duplications or headaches if you're sensitive to flicker. This TV gives a Judder-free experience with 24p sources like a Blu-ray player and native apps. Unfortunately, it doesn't remove 24p Judder from 60 Hz sources like most cable TV boxes and older streaming devices that lack a match frame rate feature. This TV's response time is just barely mediocre. Any fast motion is blurry and transitions in dark scenes are slow, which results in black smearing behind dark objects. You should probably shop for something else if horror is your favorite gaming or movie genre. Just stick to brighter titles. This TV has incredibly low input lag when set to game mode, which ensures a very responsive gaming experience with very little delay between your actions with your controller or mouse and the action on the screen. Plus, it even has low input lag while displaying a Chroma 444 signal if the input label is set to PC. This TV doesn't have HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, and all its ports top out at 4K at 60 Hz. Still, it supports all common 60 Hz resolutions up to 4K, including 1440p at 60 Hz. The Samsung Q60D is a 60 Hz TV, so it supports up to 4K at 60 Hz on the current gen consoles. It also has auto low latency mode, so it'll automatically switch to game mode when the TV detects a game console as its input device, which gives you the lowest possible input lag for games. Unfortunately, 1440p doesn't work on the PS5, and on the Xbox, it locks you out of auto low latency mode and HDR. The TV also doesn't have Dolby Vision, so there is no Dolby Vision gaming on the Xbox. The speakers on the Q60D are mediocre. They're good enough for dialogue, and they sound fine at moderate listening levels, but the sound gets progressively worse as you raise the volume, and audible distortion is heard at max volume. To make matters worse, this TV doesn't get loud, so you'll more than likely need to raise the volume. Still, if all you're looking for is clear dialogue, it's fine, but don't expect much more from it than that. So, should you buy this TV? Just like last year's Q60C, not really. It's a decent TV, but it just can't compete with models from brands like Hisense. The Hisense U6K is better and cheaper than the Q60D, as the Hisense has local dimming feature for much deeper blacks, a faster response time, and a wider color gamut. The U6K is also the more accurate TV of the two. It also supports DTS audio pass-through and has Dolby Vision. It even has a basic VRR feature for gaming. Or, if you can afford to pay a bit more, the Hisense U7K is a vastly better option. It has a much wider color gamut and color volume, and much better contrast. It also gets significantly brighter and is much more accurate than the Q60D and SDR. The U7K also has way more features, such as up to 4K at 144Hz on its two HDMI 2.1 ports, and a good VRR feature. And it has DTS audio pass-through with Dolby Vision support. Picture quality-wise, the Q60D is not in the same league as the Hisense U7K. Just like last year, there is one context where it might make sense to go for the Q60D, if you're looking for a very small TV. This model is still one of the few TVs on the market that keeps most of its features in its smaller sizes, like 4K support and the same decent image quality as the bigger models. But if you're shopping for something bigger, look elsewhere. That's all for our review of the Samsung Q60D QLED. If you want a more detailed write-up on the TV, check out our written review. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Abby from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best product for your needs. The TV gives a Judder-free experience with 24p sources. Oh my god. Sources. With the 24p sources. Why I oughta.